Welcome to the webinar, Mindfulness for Trauma Healing. My name is Danya Daccash. I'm a therapist. I have a degree in social work, my graduate degree. However, I didn't start in social work. My first degree, in fact, was in anthropology, which is the study of culture. And my area of specialty was understanding cross-cultural notions of health and healing and medicine. What I found interesting was that in most parts of the world, well-being, health, and healing is seen very much in more of an integrated way. So the link between the mind and the body, and for that matter, the spirit. So in the West, there's a small portion of medicine called mind-body medicine. Yet around the world, that mind-body medicine is just sort of seen as the normal way of understanding how ill health happens and how we can move towards health and well-being. So I was very interested in that and wanted to take that into psychological healing. And so I started studying in psychology and found that psychology was more about studying dysfunction and labeling people, and it just didn't seem to fit for me because I was much more interested in resilience and how to heal from trauma or illness. So I was more interested in what's now called positive psychology, but back then it really wasn't something that was part of the curriculum. So I switched over to social work because it offered me the ability to learn and train in feminist counseling methods and cross-cultural counseling methods. So feminist counseling would be both a focus of women's knowledge as well as an understanding of how certain difficulties in our society cause problems for women in particular. So that could be sexism, patriarchy, and cross-culturally an understanding that we don't all think the same way and we don't all heal the same way. So that was really valuable for me. And at the same time, I had the fortune to work at the Sexual Assault Support Center, so Canadian grassroots rape crisis centers, and was able to really experience feminist counseling from the bottom up, grassroots from the bottom up, where women's knowledge was valued and we were able to share our experiences with one another. So the movement was a survivor-based movement, and so it stemmed from one survivor experiencing how awful sexual violence was and feeling all alone and feeling blamed, which is unfortunately what a lot of women experience, and deciding that she wants to help other women, and so it grew and grew and grew from there. I don't want other women to experience what I've experienced. So it's survivor-based and very much a collaborative process. So let's work together to help women heal. Let's really focus on empowering women. So what asking the woman herself, what do you want to do? What do you feel is the best way through this for yourself? And so we were able to not only gain knowledge and wisdom from all of the other counselors that we worked with, but we were able to draw on the very important teachings that we gained from the women themselves who would come to us for help. And so if one woman says to me, oh, this really helps me, I did this and it's just really, really helps me, well, I would be able to then share that with the other women, who would be able to then share that with their counselors, who could then share that with their clients, and on and on. So very much it was and still is a work in progress. It's a theory that's evolving and adapting to the various ways that we can understand how to help women heal from sexual violence, which is something that we could actually prevent. So that was my formation in terms of becoming a therapist. It was extremely valuable for me. And then I moved into looking at mindfulness practices, and I spent a good number of years deepening my understanding and my practice in mindfulness, and found it enormously helpful in my own life. I had the fortune to, and still do, to spend a good chunk of time every single year on top of a 10,000 foot magnificent mountain where there's not a lot going on, so I'm able to spend a lot of time really deepening my mindfulness practice. I practice yoga and a variety of different meditations, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be able to do that. Being so high up, I've got, on one side the rolling foothills, and then on the other side the snow-capped mountains, and the luxurious valley below. Often clouds are below me, which is fantastic. And being able to watch the sunrise in the morning and the sunset over the mountain ranges at night, it really is a magical place. And in fact, the first mindfulness practice that I started with was one that my teacher teaches. He calls it the suchness of now. Thich Nhat Hanh calls this the suchness of now, and it's really about focusing on the uniqueness of this very moment. So if I'm sitting on top of my mountain and I'm seeing the mountain range below me and the shadows of the clouds moving over the mountain range, and then a flock of ravens playing in my 100-kilometer winds, which is really fun. Or if I'm meditating, to open my eyes and all of a sudden there's a marmot, a baby marmot, just sort of sitting there watching me. And you have to understand, the animals at 10,000 feet, I'm the only human that they've ever seen, so they haven't been taught to either be afraid of humans or taught that humans give them food. So it's really a special relationship to have with the animals. So I very much was able to get very, very grounded in mindfulness, drawing on the deep sense of stability from the mountain. And more recently, I've been studying the new brain science that started around the turn of the century, when scanning imagery from hospitals were being used for research purposes. So they were able to scan the brains of meditators. That's how they started, to see what's different about the brain of a meditator versus the brain of a non-meditator. And so I was very interested, as this is gaining steam and getting more and more developed as a field, neuroscience, interested in how we can change our brain and how that can change how we feel. So that's sort of a little introduction to me, myself, and just turning to the webinar. Today I'm going to talk about what is mindfulness. So we'll start with a little mindfulness practice, and then I'll talk a little bit about what is mindfulness and the basic brain science to give you a sense of what's going on in the brain and how the brain and the body are actually connected. If you look at the design of the brain, and we'll practice mindful movement. We'll do a little belly dance practice, and at the very end, I'm excited to. I have a special offer for you all. There's a lot of different ways that we can talk about mindfulness. The best way to understand mindfulness is to experience it for yourself. I'm going to start us off with a mindfulness practice so that you can feel what it feels like for you. So we can begin whichever position you're in, whether you're standing or sitting down or even lying down. Just start that way. Traditionally, you're asked to sit with dignity, not like this, but just sort of a relaxed dignity. However, for this time, if you just want to keep your back against the chair, that's just fine. Bring your awareness to your breath. As I breathe in, I know I'm breathing in. As I breathe out, I know I'm breathing out. You can shorten that in and out. So you're bringing your awareness to your breath, feeling the sensations of your breath inside your body. I feel it at the tip of my nose. I can feel it in my throat a little bit. I feel my chest expanding. You might also feel it in your belly. And sometimes it helps to focus by closing your eyes. However, you can also do this with your eyes open, whichever you're more comfortable with. So while you focus on your breath, going in and going out, you may notice that your mind has thoughts. You can just notice that you're thinking and bring your awareness back to your breath each and every time. One of the questions I get the most is, how do I stop my mind from thinking? As if you're doing something wrong if your mind continues to think. But that's just the nature of the mind. And the practice is to be aware that your mind is thinking. And as soon as you're aware of a thought, bring your attention back to the focus of your meditation. In this case, the breath. out, I know I'm breathing out. We're not trying to change our breath in any way. We're just bringing our awareness, our attention to the breath as it already is. Sometimes it's deeper, sometimes it's more shallow. Just noticing our breath. In one sense, it's bringing our mind back to our body. You can notice your body, your feet against the floor, the place of contact. Maybe you can feel your shoes around your foot. If you're sitting, you may feel your back against the back of the chair, your legs against the seat. We're bringing our awareness to the sensations in our body. The breath coming in and out. The places of contact. Bottom of our feet and back against the chair. This is one way of being present in the now. You may notice sounds. If your eyes are open, you may notice sights. You may notice a smell. The point of this meditation is to just be aware of our sensations, not to change them, just to be aware. And as soon as you have a thought, something you see, or something you feel, or a random thought, something to put on the grocery list, just notice that you're thinking and bring your attention back to your breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Now I'm going to ring a bell. So I'd like you to be aware of the sound of the bell. Follow the sound the whole way through. I'll ring the bell 3 times. And while you're breathing, listen to the bell. Bring your awareness to the bell. And if any thoughts come in your mind, just notice that you're thinking and bring your attention back to hearing the sound of the bell. And breathing. Mindfulness is awareness. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises when we pay attention in the present moment, non-judgmentally. It's the awareness that arises when we pay attention in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So another way of describing it is heartfulness. So we're bringing a sense of curiosity, friendliness, loving kindness, compassion to our present moment experience. And that would include feelings, thoughts, sensations, whatever it is that's going on in the present moment. Awareness is this capacity that we all have to hold space for and embrace all of our experience. So awareness of pain is not painful. Awareness is like a light that shines on garbage, doesn't get dirty. That same light could shine on gold, and the light doesn't get expensive. So awareness, like light, isn't changed by that which it shines upon. So it offers this little degree of freedom that we didn't realize that we had. And we live in a culture that is, in some ways, keeping us from processing to the level we need to process. We are taught to avoid pain and to seek pleasure, and that leads to addictions and chasing after happiness, while suppressed pain gets triggered and resurfaces. So there's an expression, what you resist persists, and what you can feel, you can heal. And that's a good principle to help us understand the importance of turning towards our pain, our suffering, with kindness and love and caring, to take good care of our suffering. Another point around pain is that unexamined pain we often perceive as constant, as unchanging. And the truth is that an emotion physiologically lasts about 90 seconds. And we both know that our feelings often last longer than that. Why? Because the feeling lasts 90 seconds when it's not reinforced by thought. So as soon as you have the emotion inside of you, we start to have the thoughts. Oh, this is so hard, it's never going to end. Why is this happening to me? Why did they do this to me? What am I going to do about it? I don't know what to do about it. And all of this keeps the emotion going. We can uncouple our thoughts from our emotions and our physical sensations through this practice of mindfulness, where we can be aware of our pain, we can turn towards it with kindness and love, and we can allow the emotion to come and stay a while and then leave, like weather patterns in the sky or clouds in the sky. You can see the cloud coming, it stays a while, and then it goes. And that's the same thing with our emotion. So you may notice if you're suffering and all of a sudden you notice something really beautiful, or maybe outside there's a couple of dogs playing and their tails are wagging and you're having a great time and you have a little smile on your face. You may notice this pain that was up this level all of a sudden dips a little bit because you're enjoying yourself. So in terms of Buddhist psychology, one of the first teachings that the Buddha taught was that we all suffer, there is suffering, and I'm simplifying here, but there's a way out of suffering. There's a path away from suffering. Or another way of saying that, there's a path towards joy and happiness. So these are ancient teachings from 2,500 years ago that have stood the test of time. And if we learn by practicing mindfulness, if we learn how to take good care of the garbage inside of us, we can transform that into compost, which we can then use to grow flowers of kindness and compassion and love. So there's this idea in Buddhism that we all have seeds inside of us, all of the seeds that we need. We have both the seeds of pain, suffering, anger, sadness, fear. We also have the seeds of mindfulness and understanding and concentration and insight and love. Whichever seed we water will grow. So we want to spend time watering those positive seeds inside of us to help them grow. And to use the stability that we get through those wonderful qualities of caring and kindness and compassion the stability to help us then turn towards our pain and embrace our pain like a mother cradling a baby with tenderness and caring. So to take really good care of our suffering. There's a quote from Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. It says that suffering is the kind of mud we need to use in order to grow the flowers of understanding and love. Mindfulness can be cultivated traditionally through sitting and focusing on your breath for 10-20 minutes a day. Mindfulness can also be cultivated through a variety of means throughout your day. So it could be focusing on the body sensations, listening to a sound such as a bell. It could be, in terms of a bell of mindfulness, a reminder to bring your mind back home to your body and be present for 3 conscious breaths. It could be every time you get to a red light, or every time the phone rings, or each time you get to a flight of stairs. That's going to be your bell of mindfulness, your reminder to do a little mini practice. Or it could be each time you're washing the dishes or washing your hands, that you're aware of the temperature of the water on your skin, the fragrance of the soap, to really be present to the physical sensations that you're feeling while you're performing that task. Or it could be taking a shower. It could be anything that feels right for you. And I think one of the pieces around mindfulness practice and trauma survivors is that we really have to pair the practice with the needs of the woman herself. So if focusing on the body is too much, then a skilled therapist who is trained in mindfulness has a lot of resources available to be able to sort of either tweak the practice so that it fits better for the woman, or to suggest a different kind of practice. So it may be to pay attention to something, a flower or a candle light, as it's either still or as it flickers in the air currents. So mindfulness can be practiced in a variety of ways that can be streamlined to what the woman herself feels most comfortable with. And that way, if it feels good to do it, if it feels comfortable to do it, then I'm more likely to continue the practice. And through mindfulness, we develop a trusting relationship with ourselves. And we discover that we have a diminished view of ourselves, that the lesson is that there's more to me than I realized. I thought I was my thoughts, or maybe my feelings, or maybe the things that I do. But in fact, I also include this larger sense of awareness of my thoughts, my feelings, my actions. So it gives this extra degree of space, of resources, that inner resources that we can cultivate, that we may not have known that we had. Mindfulness is empowering in that way, and it's something that nobody else can do for us. It's something that only we can do for ourselves. Now let's look at brain science of mindfulness and trauma. We know that trauma disrupts the integrated brain function. Integrated brain function is a sign of well-being. And in the turn of the century, we scientists discovered a principle called neuroplasticity. And what that means is that our brain is plastic. It's malleable. So our brain changes through experience. And what that means for trauma survivors is that we can train our brain, rewire our brain to be more resilient, calm, focused. So I'd like to look at the architecture of the brain to just give you a sense. And I'm going to use a hand model of the brain. So the arm is the spinal cord, and then this here is your brain. The hand is the brain. So the spinal cord comes up here, and it meets the brain at the oldest part of the brain called the brain stem. And this is the part of the brain that regulates the body, and it's where the fight, flight, and freeze response is, right in here in the brain stem. And then the thumb is showing you where the limbic system is. And this is the emotional center of your brain. That's where your amygdala is. Your amygdala is the place in your brain which is all about sensing danger and being on alert. So that's this emotional part of the brain. And then there's the more evolved, the more recent part of the brain, which is most evolved in humans, is the cortex. And up here in the front is the frontal cortex. And if you see my fingernails here, that would be where the eyes are. So that shows you the position of the brain and the head. So the prefrontal cortex is the place where we do our thinking, and right here where the fingernails are, there's the fibers that come down and help with the integration of the limbic system and the brain stem, and by extension the regulation of the body. So in a lot of ways our brain doesn't just reside in our head. It actually has deep connections down into our body, and that's why mind-body medicine practices we can see through neuroscience are essential, especially for healing trauma. So if we look here, this part of the brain, the older part of the brain, so the limbic system and the brain stem, that's a part of the brain that doesn't have words. The language center in the brain is up here. And so this part doesn't understand concepts, it doesn't have language, and this is the part of the brain that's sort of stuck in, for a lot of survivors, it's stuck in that fight, flight, and freeze mode. And that's part of the reason why talk therapy might not be enough to help survivors. We need a more body-centered or integrative approach to help survivors heal from the trauma. So what happens in the brain is that information and energy flow up through the spinal cord from the senses, what your senses through, your sight and your hearing and your touch, and senses from your organs and such, comes up through here, and it flows down through the frontal cortex, which integrates and regulates the information and sends information back down. So it's this this sort of cycle back and forth, up and down through the body, to the brain, and then back down through the body. And when we have too much stress, the fibers that are connecting the prefrontal cortex down through the more primitive part of the brain, they get looser and thinner, kind of like if you've heard of the expression, "I'm hanging on by my fingernails." Well, that's kind of what's happening in the brain. And at a certain point, if there's too much stress, you flip your lid, and so you lose the benefit of the prefrontal cortex when you flip your lid. And that's the part which is about reflecting and perspective taking, and I've been here before, I've gotten through this, wisdom, mindfulness. So what we know through the scanning technology for people who practice mindfulness, in as little time as 1 month, so 4 weeks of practice, 20 minutes a day, they can actually see changes in the brain, thickening of the parts of the brain that are really helpful for trauma survivors. So it doesn't take a lot of time to start getting benefits from mindfulness. And what happens is that mindful practice helps to strengthen those fibers down to the more primitive brain, the limbic system and the brain stem, to help soothe that part of the brain, which also helps soothe the body. So it's very, very effective. It's very, very helpful to practice mindfulness, and as you can see through the way the brain works. And it also allows you to have access to the network of compassion, which is also up here. And that can be an issue also for trauma survivors, is to be able to feel compassion for themselves, because there's a lot, even in society, that blames the victim. It's your fault. Why were you there? Why didn't you fight harder? Whatever it is that's broken in the way our society is, that reinforces that sense of isolation and judgment and being self-critical. So this mindfulness is really helpful to help calm that down, soothe that down, and at the same time you're building capacity in your brain, you're building resilience in the brain. So in terms of neuroscience of trauma, we need to feel safe in our bodies, and mindfulness has been shown to help feeling safe in our bodies, because we're able to turn towards emotion, and we recognize that we have more capacity than we thought to hold our feelings and thoughts in awareness. Another thing that's important for trauma survivors is to soothe the body and the emotion. So tend and befriend. It's very, very important to help calm the older part of the brain as well as the body. And the third thing is the watering the positive seeds that you want to grow. So to take in the good. And the more you can savor what's good, even the more neutral things that are pleasant, the longer that you can take that in to savor it, the more it will install, so to speak, in the brain. There's so many ways that modern science shows that mindfulness stabilizes survivors. There's robust evidence that mindfulness practices reduce psychological distress, sort of in general. It increases resilience, increases the ability to hold space for difficult emotions and thoughts. So it offers increased cognitive or mental flexibility. So where before you thought there was no other option but this, or there was no way out, all of a sudden there's this being more open to possibilities. It reduces anxiety and stress. It's been shown to be as effective as anti-depressants. It lowers cortisol levels, so that's your stress hormone. And we know that trauma affects our cells all the way down to the DNA level. And modern science has also discovered that mindfulness can repair our cellular damage all the way down to the DNA level that's caused by trauma. So whether you look at it from ancient wisdom, 2,500-year-old wisdom, or from the perspective of modern science, mindfulness optimizes the healing potential of trauma survivors. Mindful movement is a fun way to cultivate mindfulness. Today we're going to do belly dancing as a way of practicing mindfulness. Belly dancing is something that I grew up with. I remember on the weekends my mom would flip on the Arabic music and we would dance around the living room together. I have very fond memories of dancing with my mother. So today I get to share that with you. So we'll start with posture. I'll remind you that I can't see you, so I'm not able to correct your posture. So hopefully my instruction will be clear. I also hope that you stretched beforehand for the sake of time. We're going to go right into it, and I'll remind you to make sure you stretch afterwards to prevent injury. So we'll start with our feet hip width apart, our knees slightly bent, and our stomach just sort of lift from the inside, and then your chest lift up. So your stomach is slightly engaged, your abdomen, but it's not sucked up like that, it's just slightly engaged. Shoulders slightly up, slightly back, slightly down. That helps you get into posture. And you can imagine a string, sort of just a very, very light pull up there, so that you're not slouched over like this. You're just sort of like this. So that's posture, basic posture. So we'll start with our hands. So you just do circles with your hands. You put your middle finger in a little bit to help guide the motion. And allow it to flow. It doesn't have to be fast. None of the movements actually need to be fast in belly dance. It's much more important to have control when you're doing the motion and have it smooth, like this. So you can close your eyes and feel your hands from the inside of your body. And you can move your hands around a little bit. Play around with it. This is about fun. So let's move to our shoulders. I say shoulders and I immediately do up, back, and down. just to get myself into posture. So we're going to focus on this part of our shoulders, the front here. We're going to go forward, 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 forward. A little bit faster. This is the motion for a shimmy, if you go really fast, but you don't need to go very fast. We're just starting to get the hang of the motion, and you can close your eyes and feel what it feels like for your shoulders. The rest of your body is still. Well, my hands are moving, just because I'm used to my hands moving, but the rest of your body is still, and you're just focusing on your shoulders. You can feel from the inside what it feels like. We're so used to experiencing our body from the way other people see us. It's refreshing to feel our bodies from the inside. And if you feel like it, you can go a little faster. You can go into a shimmy. But if not, you can just go like this. Some movements, you just go boom, boom, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum. So it's not necessarily always the shimmy. It could just be this knowing how to boom, boom with your shoulder, boom, boom. So it's nice to just practice this motion. So if the music comes on and you want to play with your hands, you can do this. That's part of belly dancing. If you want to throw in a little shoulder, you can do that. If you want to practice this, you can do that. So let's move to the hips. So I'm going to teach a side-to-side hip movement. So we'll start off with a sway. So feet hip width apart, knees slightly bent, and we'll sway to the side, and we're swaying from about here. So you're sort of moving your hip out from this place. Sway. So just to get the hang of the movement. So as I move my right hip out, my right leg straightens, and my left leg bends, the knee bends. And then the opposite. Left hip out, left hip straight, left knee straight, right knee bent. So you're alternating knees, straightening and bending. And the straightened leg is the one that's activating the hip. Straightened leg activates the hip. Straighten, I'm pointing here, but the motion is from this place. You can do it a little bit faster when you get into the hang of it, when you get the hang of it. So I'll do it like this so you can see my knees better. So the one that's straightened, the hip goes out. And the upper body, try and allow it to be still. So you're isolating the movement of the hip. And if you don't quite get it, you can slow it down. So knees bent, slightly bent, and you straighten one knee while that same hip goes out. You straighten the other knee as the other hip goes out. So we're going to take it in a little bit and not so much out. And we're just going to start again, knees slightly bent. And we're going to straighten one leg, and the hip just sort of slightly goes, I'll put my hands here so you can see, slightly goes up. And then we straighten the other leg, and the other hip goes up. And it's this motion that if you do it faster, you get the hip shimmy. But in belly dance, you don't always have to do it fast. You could just go boom, 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 ba-dum, boom, ba-da-dum, ba-da. My mouth doesn't do drum very well. So, leg that straightens is connected to the hip that goes up, and the other knee's bent, and then the other one, leg straightens, hip goes up, and the opposite is bent, so you can feel that. So just do it. If you can, close your eyes. Like anything else, our brain learns by repetition, our body learns by repetition. So the more you practice this, the more it'll be flowing. And if you want it a little bit more challenging, you can get up on your toes. So I straighten and this hip goes out, I straighten and this hip goes out. So I often walk around my place like this, just sort of to get used to it. And this is the same motion that you can use. If you notice, if you've seen belly dancing, their hip goes like this. So it's that same motion, the straightening of the knee. I'm not using my hip at all, but because I'm using my knee and my knee's connected to the hip, because all of our body is interconnected, I straighten my knee and my hip goes up. So I'm going to put a little bit of a drumming beat, and we can just practice some of the things that we've learned. So we can start with our hands. Shoulders. There are many ways to practice mindfulness. Neuroscience shows the importance of these practices for a healthy and integrated brain and body. When using mindfulness for trauma recovery, it's helpful to have ongoing guidance and also the support of community. This optimizes healing, resilience, and post-traumatic growth. These teachings and others are at the heart of my upcoming sexual violence healing program, which incorporates personalized one-on-one telephone therapy with me and an online support group. Due to its virtual nature, the program is available to women around the world with phone and internet access. And for anyone who mentions this webinar, I'm offering a 10% discount on the healing program. Follow the link below to find out more and to sign up for your free consultation. That's it. Thank you for joining this webinar.